I'm assuming you all know Veena is a very well-known engineer. She just won the Chemical College Engineer of the Year, so just doing a little shout out there. I'm very conscious I'm the first speaker after lunch, and I've wondered whether I need you to get up and do some rocking and rolling, but maybe we'll do that after my presentation. Thank you very much for having me here today, and I want to firstly acknowledge the land and the waterways on which we meet today and pay my respects to elders past and present. I also want to acknowledge the organisers of the conference, especially my colleague Alexis Davison. Organising events like this is no small task to bring together people. If I've just walked out through the back and where you were having lunch, and there is so much engagement went into ensuring that all those stands were there for you, and the strong speaking program that has been put together for the last 2 days, so congratulations. And I'm just going to do a couple of shout outs. I know Ian Porter spoke to you before, replacing Jim Betts. I know Ainsley Simpson's here from Infrastructure Sustainability Council. Two of my former infrastructure colleagues, Adam Kopp, CEO of Infrastructure Australia, and Jonathan Spear, CEO of Infrastructure Victoria. And my Circular Economy Ministerial Advisory group colleagues, Lisa McLean and Dominique Hess. The three of us have been doing some really great work together on built environment and infrastructure as part of CMAG. And finally, Jodie Brocote, I know that you spoke, I have had a number of people speak very highly of Jodie's presentation. She's principal of Oricon's Australasia's Sustainability and Climate Change Division, and a number of people have spoken very highly of her presentation. Australia is making real progress and charting a path forward to making our infrastructure purposefully greener as part of meeting the country's ambitious net zero goals. What we are working towards will not be achieved by any single industry or profession, but by collaboration between all of us. The circular economy is based on three principles: designing out waste and pollution, viewing waste as a design flaw and avoiding it, and regenerating natural systems. As a sector, we have a role to play in each of these areas, but you all know this, and that's why you're all here this week. The challenges our communities are facing in terms of housing, transport, and health infrastructure all need to be managed by a sector who is thinking about how to deliver practically on our commitments and long-term goals. I wanted to provide you with a bit of a background for those in the room who I haven't met to help set the scene of the context I will bring to this topic. I've been the CEO of Engineers Australia for over a year, and in leading this peak body have been impressed on a regular basis by the innovation and ingenuity of Australia's engineers in developing sustainable circular economy solutions across a range of industries and sectors. Before this, I had the pleasure of leading Infrastructure Australia for over 3 years, where I was incredibly proud of the work we did to drive major focus on sustainability and resilience. But we didn't do this alone. We did it with all the other states and territories and federal government, and we did it through COVID, and we did it collaboratively. We effectively embedded these considerations into the organisation's reform and investment advice. And before this, I was CEO of Green Building Council of Australia for 13 years. And many of you will be familiar with GBCA, who lead the sustainable transformation of the built environment and are responsible for the Green Star rating system. As well as measuring the sustainability of our buildings, fit-outs and communities, it also educates industry, government, practitioners and decision makers, and promotes green building programs, technologies, design practices and operations. When I joined GBCA in 2006, just a handful of projects, and they were from Melbourne, and one from Canberra, were Green Star rated. The day I left in 2019, we had over 2,250 Green Star rated projects. But this was really done in a collaborative mindset. This kind of innovation is a marker of what we can do, how an industry we can continue to lead the way. In February this year, I was humbled to be appointed by Minister Plibersek to the Circular Economy Ministerial Advisory Group, which I've mentioned. This is tasked with identifying opportunities and challenges in Australia's transition to a circular economy, with a focus on waste management, improved product design, and the building of more efficient production processes. This group brings together a mix of experts and key stakeholders, and I'm particularly excited to be co-chairing the infrastructure stream with Dom and Lisa, as I mentioned. So as someone who brings a range of experiences from across the built environment and infrastructure, I want to just talk about some of the practical steps we can take to build purposefully greener infrastructure. This relies on us striking a balance between where we are creating and the environment we exist within. We are already seeing a growing shift across the country towards a more circular economy, but we can do better. And the numerous government and industry initiatives that explore and facilitate the use of recycled materials are very encouraging. Like CSIRO's National Circular Economy Roadmap, which began early to chart a path to how we can realise economic benefits from taking advantage of a circular economy through designing new products and materials and embracing business models that create markets for waste streams. The adoption of green infrastructure principles into the approach of urban planning and design frameworks, through to investment and in financial instruments, are all critical building blocks and provide the foundations we need to get to net zero. And as mentioned in the video, Victoria has set ambitious emissions reduction targets, meaning it is at the forefront of climate action, specifically through the Recycled First policy. The Victorian Government is seeking new opportunities to purchase products containing Victorian recycled materials and use recycled materials to build roads, railways and other public infrastructure. And let's be really clear, thinking back to the Circular Economy Ministerial Advisory Group, all the ministers and federally have all agreed to targets by net 30. This is coming. We need to be, and I know I'm not, you're all in the room for the same reason I am and feel very passionate about this. But you need to use your voice and your advocacy to ensure that others appreciate the importance of the circular economy. For every adaptation, innovation and goal, there comes a need to support that with practical physical infrastructure that enables delivery. Climate change mitigation and adaptation cannot be successful without the input of our infrastructure industry and particularly, though I may be biased in saying so, our engineers. Their work spans all industries, including energy, manufacturing and transport, which are historically very emissions intensive. Engineers have a key role to play in designing, developing and deploying safe, affordable and innovative technologies and whole-of-life systems to achieve sustainability. This includes net zero emissions hydrogen, low emissions steel and cement, energy storage, carbon capture utilisation and storage, to name a few. On scales both big and small, there are numerous initiatives and innovations which are charting our path to greener infrastructure, and I will illustrate just a few. Tyres are a great example of waste material that engineers and experts have been experimenting with to reuse some of the 56 million tyres that are disposed of each year. Recycling their inputs into everything from fuel to brake pads to rail mats and road construction materials and surfacing takes a product that would otherwise sit in landfill and give it new purpose. One of the newer techniques being explored by engineers at RMIT University here in Melbourne is taking PPE to strengthen concrete while providing an innovative way to reduce pandemic-generated waste like masks, gloves and surgical gowns. It is incredible that our engineers are able to find a way to give this material, which was of such critical value in its first use, a just as critical second life. Trials are underway to test the optimal mix with the hopes that we will be able to make a difference both to the material going to landfill or being incinerated, as well as making a concrete mix which is more sustainable. Recently, I was very fortunate to visit Lang O'Rourke's Centre of Excellence for Modern Construction, CMEC, in Nottinghamshire in UK, and their design for manufacturing plant. Their DFMA 70-60-30 operating model is based on their unrivalled in-house capability in modern methods of construction. It is Europe's most advanced concrete products manufacturing facility and employs 400 people, mostly local, who work closely, and also 85% of material comes within 50 miles of the factory, who work closely with digital engineers and project teams to design and precision manufacture a range of components for use in major building and infrastructure projects. This includes twin walls, floor slabs, pillars, high-quality facades, and new digital modular bridges to span roads and railway. And they even have 2 playgrounds, and both of them are about as big as this room, and they literally just put up structures and test them. And normally the structures are 30% use of material than would be in a normal structure, and they just leave it out there, outside, and they just test it, see how it goes, monitor how it's wearing and tearing. When we walked outside of the facility, there were all these modular concrete slabs that were about to be used in infrastructure projects, and we could see brick walls being built inside the facility and then being built up and finished off. And these bricks were individually made locally with local material. Really, it was really exciting to see. Frustratingly, though, that we don't see that use of modular all the time. Every year, we're exploring how we can keep more materials in the circular loop. We also can't forget the role that artificial intelligence is playing, which will only grow. There are a number of fledgling platforms that use cameras and deep learning capabilities to improve the recycled potential of mixed waste streams to identify different materials. And we saw some of this when we were at the Faculty of Civil Engineering at Cambridge. The possibilities of where this could grow and develop is very exciting. We need to continue to amplify the work that has been done and the ongoing innovation to grow awareness and ultimately improve prevalence. This innovation in green infrastructure comes with a challenge, which as CEO of Engineers Australia is one of our key priorities, and that is the pressure of our current workforce supply places on our ability to advance. Australia is experiencing its greatest ever engineering skill shortages. We urgently need more engineers working across the whole economy to help drive and enable this enormous transition and to allow us to build the workforce of the future. Over the next 2 years, it's estimated that a further 41,000 individuals are needed to fill engineering roles. 41,000 people who can solve our challenges across civil, geotechnical, structural and material engineering. So we are very focused on unlocking the untapped potential that both our membership and the potential engineers of the future. We still have a long way to go in terms of diversity and inclusion and attracting young people, particularly women, into the infrastructure industry. Thousands of migrant engineers are in this country and they're not able to find relevant work. They're usually Uber drivers or cleaners. Our workforce needs to be constantly upskilled to work with emerging technologies. And registration schemes across the country are decentralised, which means we don't have uniformity in training. And when we look to the green infrastructure revolution, harnessing the opportunities of the transition to green infrastructure, including in energy generation, for example, requires a massive build-out across all areas, be that planning, design, construction, operation and maintenance. So we also need to make sure that there is an ability for people to shift into new areas and develop new skills. And consideration, it takes around 10 years to train and develop a practicing engineer. We need to make sure that both young and established engineers have the skills for the needs of today. And we need to provide opportunities for engineers to tap into the right courses and micro-credentials so they can maintain relevance to ensure tomorrow's outcomes are fit for purpose. And that means focusing on facilitating opportunities for our engineers to pivot to growth areas like robotics, AI, green engineering and hydrogen energy, where they'll be required. There is a lot we can do and are doing to improve recruitment, retention and investment in our professionals' careers. And one of the best ways that we can foster an environment open to innovation is by embedding standards and guidelines, both in training as well as through procurement processes to directly support great innovation in Australian infrastructure. Investing in innovative infrastructure doesn't just mean delivering projects that mean green credentials. It means building a system that encourages circular economy principles by reforming tender processes. It means developing and implementing a consistent procurement framework. Procurement, 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 and I hope you've had that discussion over the last day and a half. Making procurement processes simpler, will benefit smaller infrastructure businesses and numerous benefits both by stimulating the economy as well as smaller businesses tending to take more innovative approaches. Procurement targets should be framed to accelerate decarbonisation, and they should also be established in such a way to push for innovation from the get-go. We need regulatory instruments to put in place to facilitate the availability and the use of secondary materials, to improve product standards, warranties and product serviceability as a basis to improve resource efficiency, and even looking at solutions such as creating certified production processes that redefine waste as byproducts, which will enable easier uptake in secondary markets. They're doing it overseas, why can't we scale up here? As the world continues to embrace technology and systems becomes more sophisticated and interdependent, engineering leadership and multidisciplinary problem solving is crucial to achieving the necessary step change toward a sustainable society. Engineers must be at the forefront in policy formulation and decision making, affecting the scoping, planning, delivery, design and operations of systems for climate change mitigation and adaptation. Immediate action at pace and scale must occur to minimise climate disruption, and creating ecosystems that harness, reinforce and recirculate innovation is key. We need to come together as infrastructure professionals, our planners, engineers, material producers and suppliers, everyone, to build our future in a sustainable manner. And this will require collaboration, a greater use of technology, social engineering and a bold vision for what can be and rather than what has been done. We need to look at our projects as part of a system, managing the developments in a holistic manner and thinking about how they interconnect. This will also allow for consideration of all the stages of the system, like systems life cycle from design through construction, operation, maintenance and decommissioning. Through greater collaboration, new funding models, better integration of technology, and by remembering that infrastructure is a complex and interrelated system, we can establish ecosystems that advance sustainability. Co-location of industrial and commercial businesses, for example, so they can share resources and learn from each other's production processes. And this idea of industrial symbiosis, which not only increases opportunities for efficiencies, finances and competitiveness, but would lead to improved connection across disciplines. Where we want to get to is an operating environment where businesses feed off each other. The regulatory and compliance burden for engineering startups is frequently higher than for startups in other sectors due to the regulated nature of the industry. And a lack of regulation in mandating sustainability and circularity in the built environment is one of the top inhibitors to change our members of EAs identified in a recent survey. They also identified a lack of consistency from government in what they ask for. To achieve greater circularity, we need cross-industry collaborations and strong incentives from industry and from government to help us build what we know to be the system of the future. But we need to do this work together to create a self-fulfilling ecosystem where innovation encourages innovation across innovation and systems. I want to thank you once again for inviting me to speak and contribute to this engaging agenda. My mission is to support engineers in their pivotal role they play in shaping the future of Australia, creating safe, successful and sustainable communities. I can see the momentum building to understand the challenges and influence change. And as this week has shown, I think you all can too. There are many practical steps we can take now to build the circular, greener infrastructure industry we want to create for the future. Increasing the momentum of innovation by removing barriers and enabling it with regulatory change, investment and incentives. Building the capacity for our organisations, ensuring we have a strong and motivated workforce. We have the correct skills and expertise to deliver, as well as innovative, change-oriented mindset. And ultimately, having an infrastructure culture that is not just an industry, but an ecosystem, working collaboratively towards our common goal. I look forward to being part of this with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Romilly. I guess you can see the questions coming thick and thin.
There's
Go
the first
for it.
question, Anonymous. Love Anonymous. How is the Ministerial Council ensuring action, not just talk? Well, firstly, how is John Thwaites is the chair, and any of you who've worked on a committee with John Thwaites before, he knows that he gets stuff done. And from the first meeting we've had, it's very much been action-focused. And the Minister is very clear what can be done short-term, and I mean in the next 18 months. We've been together for over nearly a year. So we've already got draft recommendations. We've broken down into a number of areas. So the first, and every time we meet, we focus on a specific area. So the last one, Dom, Lisa and I ran, which was building and infrastructure and embodied carbon. And we're really looking, and every single meeting we have, another Cabinet Minister is there. So the next meeting will be the Treasurer, the one before was the Trade Minister, the one before that was the Industry Minister. So we're very much looking at the sector plans that have been announced and where circularity can go across the whole system. The recommendations are pretty black and white. So let's be frank, we need to look at the use of virgin materials and whether we need to be putting the disincentive to use virgin materials and the incentive to use recycled materials and how we're using materials in our system. We're really looking at the ways that we can do work in the building codes, the ways that Green Building Council and Infrastructure Sustainability Council can embed circularity, and I know they both do, but increase that in their rating tools, because we know that government across Australia use Green Star and the Infrastructure Sustainability tool. So every time we have a meeting, we increase the recommendations and we're constantly challenging ourselves about it not being a talk fest. So I feel quite comfortable that the work that we're doing in there is really trying to drive change and drive it quite quickly. But remember, we've got 10 years to make up.
It's about engineers, of course, now, being encouraged to actually bring in more recycled content, bring that in as part of that whole circular way of thinking, but to actually make that as a proactive first step.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important question. So we find, and the feedback we get from engineers is that they may raise the importance of using recycled materials as part of the scope of a project, and then whoever the lead is on the project, whether it's private or public, if they're not comfortable with understanding the innovation around recycled materials, go, no, we're just going to stick with what we've always done. So it is really important to actually, when you get an answer like that, take them on a journey. Take them on a journey. So when we're at Infrastructure Australia, we tried to work out why over 30 infrastructure projects we'd reviewed the business cases for, not one had picked up the impacts of climate change. Why did that happen across state and territory, when every state and territory had committed to targets by 2050? So we went to find out that answer, and the answer was a lot of our public servants and bureaucrats aren't actually trained like you are. They're not. So they'll go to what they know and what they're comfortable with, and that was what was done before. And that's why organisations and events such as today that Alexis has pulled together, is you have to, when you meet people like that, teach them, take them on a journey, take them to a site visit where it's been done well. Help increase their skills, because when they're confident with the material, they'll be then confident to embed innovation and recycled materials into projects. When they're not confident, they won't do it, even though they have been told through government to do it. But I'll remind you of one thing. Last year, the federal government had the Climate Change Act, and it's now been embedded in a number of legislations, including the Infrastructure Australia Act. So if states and territories want money from the federal government, they're going to have to start doing this. So when you get pushback, you push back too.
That's a good point, really, really good point. I guess the question here is about the role of EA, and I don't know, Romilly, whether you would like to address, whether EA is playing a part in encouraging engineers to adopt these practices.
Very much so. So our biggest event of the year is it's our engineering conference, which is later in the year, and it's all around sustainability in engineering. So it's CSE, which it's on in November. So we hold it every year, and we've got our Climate Smart Engineering Initiative, and then the Climate Smart Engineering Conference. So we're pushing this through numerous channels. So our Climate Smart Initiative, we're involved in COP, through micro-credentialing, through training, through using case studies. For those of you who get our Create magazine or our Eng News, we're constantly using examples to take them on a journey. People like you, Veena, that we showcase regularly on what can be done. So it really is trying to using case studies and examples of best practice, but then also ensuring that they're changing their mindset, and we are incorporating it into all the, I mean, it's very high on the agenda. I mean, it's one of our top 4 priorities is climate smart engineering. So it's very much in what we do, and in all our submissions, we're constantly bringing it in to our submissions as well.
Yeah, awesome. I guess, I mean, you know, there's that always sort of understanding that we've got to keep raising that awareness, that connectivity, and you've talked about that interlinked complex system, you know, whether it's circularity, it's recycling, it's carbon emissions. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, so this is a really important point, and that's the work that we were doing at the last CMAG meeting around the link between recycled materials, circularity and carbon. They are definitely linked. Very definitely linked. But the challenge we have in Australia is inconsistent standards, inconsistent measurement, multiple people saying, oh, we're doing a new embodied carbon something. And all that does is cost time and money, and also confusion. We need consistency. The 3 of us, Lisa, Dom and I, knew that we didn't have all the answers. While we were on CMAG, we knew that we needed to go out to others to get advice on this. So we held a roundtable earlier in the year, an online roundtable for over 4 hours, and we had over 60, nearly 70 academics, industry players and government officials, and we just workshopped for those hours on what is it we need to be taking to government. And this point around recycled materials opportunity and the interlinking with carbon was really important, but it was really around consistent standards and consistent measurement. Our databases and the use of technology was really key as well, and the government's role in playing that, both the federal government and the state governments. And so we don't want another rail gauge issue. If you are a rail engineer and you're going from Victoria to WA, you need to be trained in 3 different states. Or, as you know, the rail gauge issue is that our states decided to do different rail gauges. We need to ensure the work that we're doing now is we don't keep reinventing new things, that we're really consistent and we're standardising what we're doing. So that the work on carbon really is another focus of CMAG.
One last thing before I let you go. This is, of course, not something we can answer quickly in the last few seconds left. But I guess the question that's come in is, you know, ultimately, do we have a system? Is there a way in which we can say, here's the best way to measure circularity? It's complex, but...
It is complex, and the government is very aware of that. So a circular economy framework is in development by CMAG, and that is something that will be released soon by the government. And that hopes to pick up some of these, bring in some consistency in how we're talking about circular economy, and we'll pick up things like measuring it. So it'll be in the framework.
Awesome. Thank you. Please join with me in thanking Romilly Madew.